Hello plant friends, my name is Jimmy. I'm a doctor and tropical plant hobbyist in LA, and this channel is about plants. So this is going to be the last episode in the Collector Seller series. In this series we went to visit SoCal Tropics, a husband and wife team of 17 years experience in the plant hobby. They have been collecting, selling, buying, growing plants for 17 years, and throughout this series they shared their plants with us as well as just tons and tons of knowledge. So I figured for the last episode in their series, we can review all the sort of like tidbits of plant knowledge that they imparted on us in one episode.
For most of the aeroids here that we have, generally water it during the summer months about once every 4 weeks.
You water it once every 4 weeks.
Yes. Absolutely, and during the winter it could be up to 6 weeks.
Once every 4. What? Wow.
No misting, no humidifiers.
No misting, no humidifiers. They prefer to be on the dry side, and we've learned through trial and error over the years, especially with the Monstera, the variegated Monsteras, if you overwater them, they will rot.
Yeah.
Oof. Watering once every 4 to 6 weeks. Wow. That's nuts.
We use 50% bagged regular Miracle Grow from Home Depot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we add an additional 50% or 40%, even 50%.
40-50%.
It depends. Like this is a higher ratio
like
perlite in this one compared to that one.
Yeah.
But they like fast draining.
Yeah.
Everything, all these aeroids and Monsteras and just everything, they all want the fast draining mix.
I like their soil mixture. 50% perlite, 50% Miracle Grow. Very easy. Very cheap, right? And you don't have to buy a ton of products. You don't have to buy, have a bunch of like soil or aeroid mix bags lying around. It's just two things, right? So I love it. I think the more minimal, it saves time, it saves stress, it saves brain cells. It saves money. It's great. So absolutely love their soil mix. I think that as I've gone on, as I progressed with my planting journey, I've definitely totally increased my love for perlite and my use of perlite. So I think a 50-50 mix is probably where I'm at right now. Sometimes I do 40-60, but I usually do either 50-50 or even 60-40. So 60% perlite, 40% potting mix. I love perlite. I love it. I feel like it's super cheap and it's so safe to use. I feel that I always run into problems when I don't have enough perlite in my mixes, and I've never been in a situation where I look at my plant or my pot and I'm like, oh, I should have cut down on the perlite, right? I've just never had that situation. I love perlite.
You have a huge pot in this one. This is a...
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to transplant it anytime soon.
And that's the other misconception out there. People say, well, I've got this small plant. What size pot should I use?
Yes, there's a lot of people saying that if you get a pot that's too big for the root ball, then you're more likely to have root rot.
I've taken little teeny plants, put them in the 24-inch boxes. It's a matter of how you take care of it and water it.
So start with the pot that you love and a size that your home or your particular room can handle.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put that little plant in that bigger pot, and it's going to do fine. Just get it in that proper mix, the proper lighting, the proper watering, and it's fine. You don't need to start with a super tiny pot and then gradually go up. You don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Planet Earth is the world's largest pot.
I think that the biggest reason that I can think of that they can spread their watering out to every 4 to 6 weeks is the way they plant their plants. So you can see that they used very, very big pots that are significantly oversized for the root structure and the size of their plants. And then those pots are also plastic, right? So the only way that water, in any form escapes the big pot is that either through the drainage hole at the bottom or it has to just like slowly evaporate out, right? That's really the only way that water sort of can leave the potting environment. So I think that what happens is that when you're using such a big pot and it's plastic, as well as a very, very well-draining soil mix, right? They use 50% perlite, 50% Miracle-Gro potting soil, right? That's like super, super well-draining. In a huge plastic pot, they probably have like the lower parts of the pot probably just ends up being a moisture reservoir as the excess, the overly excess fluid drains out from the drainage hole. The water reservoir probably just slowly evaporates the water over time. And I think that's probably why they're able to maintain a every 4 to 6 week watering schedule.
So this plant, I guess, is far enough from your window where like it needs this little lamp LED, right?
The daylight LED.
That's the only sun it's getting almost. Primarily, this is like the sun.
I've learned that you have to, if they're especially far away and on a grow light, they've got to be on 12 to 16 hours a day because it's not the real sun.
Yeah.
So as far as their needs, they need to be on.
So you compensate intensity for duration, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing you guys probably have noticed in the episodes that they have a lot of light. They have a beautiful home with tons of windows. And it's great because they have so many windows, and like basically every window has tons of plants in front of it, which is a dream, right? But anyways, they have just a lot of light in their living space, and it's like even the plants that are just a little bit away from the windows, they have supplemental lights. Yeah, so they have a lot of light. Their plants are very pampered in the light area. My plants don't. I would say that none of my plants have as much light as their plants have, right? I keep telling you guys in most of my videos that my plants are just like hanging around in like medium indirect light, right? Medium and low indirect light. I do have supplemental lights for them, but if we're talking about the amount of direct or indirect sunlight or natural light, they only get about medium to low natural light, and they've been doing fine. If you had a lot of light, I'm not recommending that you put your plants in less light situations, right? So if you have a lot of light, that's great. That's wonderful. I wish my place had more natural light, but if you don't have that much natural light, it doesn't mean you can't grow these amazing plants, right? I think that a lot of people are overestimating or overvaluing the amount of natural light that these plants really, really need. There are a lot of growers and collectors, probably all around the world that have situations where they don't have that much natural light in their space and they have to augment the light. So, I think if you guys don't have that much natural light, one is that your plants probably don't need as much light as you think to survive, and two is that you can always augment it with more, artificial lights. I think they used LEDs, lighting, and it's if you notice they were just white, right? They like me, I don't think they like the colored lights. I definitely am not a colored light person. The regular LEDs are working great for me.
The big one is a humidifier that we're very much against.
Yeah.
For us especially is it can cause spread of viral and bacterial and fungal issues in the mist. So when you have that constantly going, and let's say you bring in a plant that you didn't see anything on and you put it in with your other plants, and that mist just makes
I see
the
what you're saying.
spread through the air. And it'll land on other plants, and I've had people actually lose their whole collection over that. So you have to be very careful with the humidifiers.
So Christy and Jack seem to have a very strong view on humidity, as in they don't like humidity at all. I know that, from talking to a lot of collectors and growers and, the social media forums, a lot of people love humidity. A lot of people think that like humidity is the answer to everything, right? Like your plant's not growing fast enough, add more humidity. Your plant's like drying, add more humidity. Your plant's dying, add more humidity. You're rooting a cutting and it's not working, add more humidity. So I think there's a lot of like very pro humidity people, and I think Christy and Jack are probably on the other end of the spectrum where they're very against humidity. I'm probably like most things. I'm probably like more towards the middle where I'm like, I think that there are some of us, some growers, collectors, who live in areas where you do need a humidifier. Christy and Jack are in San Diego, and in Southern California, it's a very mild environment. Our summers are not ridiculous. Our winters are not ridiculous. So, I think that if I had to estimate, I would think that their humidity is probably around 50, probably around 50 to 60. And I suspect that if they don't put on the heater, it probably stays that way for most of the year. And it may, even go up to like 70 or so, I suspect. So for those who live in areas that are a lot drier, like let's say like the Midwest or some, desert regions, I think it's impossible unless you have a greenhouse setup to not use humidifiers, right? Like I just think it's impossible. And especially during the winters when, you have heaters on, heaters really dry up the air. I have like a gas heater, and when the heater's on, the air that's coming out of it is about 20, maybe 15 to 20% humidity. Like it just, it just tanks my humidity. Like I have to like totally rev up my humidifiers, and I have to even like mist my plants because, like when my heater is on full blast, my place just like dries up, and I can even like feel it. I can feel, either my skin or my nose or whatever is drying up. So, there's probably a lower end of the humidity spectrum where plants, you sort of just need to hit that for your plants to do okay, right? And I think that lower limit is probably around 50%. I think that if you go below 50%, your plants are going to start, telling you that they're unhappy. They're going to start drying up, a lot of them, right? But I think a lot of plants would be okay with about 50%. I think if you aim towards like 60%, that's great. I think if you, anything like 70 above, like your plants are sort of like in paradise. So I have a Levoit humidifier which goes on automatically, and I set the automatic level at 55% currently. So that means that when the humidity drops, below 55, then it starts, humidifying. So when I have it at 55% humidity at my place, the water tank would last me about a week to a week and a half. Okay, so at 55, the tank lasts me a week to a week and a half. If I set it to a threshold of 60, as in, it would try to maintain the humidity at 60, that tank lasts me about 2 days. Right? So there's a big difference, in terms of care, in terms of maintenance, in terms of like what I have to do to keep my place between, at 55 and to keep it at 60. That's only 5 degrees, or 5 percentage points, I guess, of difference in humidity. But for me, it's a whole lot more work, right? And then also, once I'm above 60, I can really feel it. I'm just like, oh, this place feels really humid for me. So, in terms of humidity, just keep in mind that, you probably want to do what you can to keep it above 50, or wherever your plants are telling you, hey, I'm just like too dry. When you guys want to really, really up the humidity level to to have your plants in plant paradise at the higher humidity levels, just know that sometimes that takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of like time and maintenance, and that may not be practical or useful or doable for some of you. Okay, so I think those are the two things that to keep in mind. For me, I always strive to figure out what the lower thresholds are, right? It's like, what's the least I can do to keep my plants alive, right? I'm just aiming for alive. I'm not even aiming for like thriving, right? I'm just like, just stay alive. So, I think, yeah, I guess, again, I set my plants around my humidifier to be around like 55. I think at that point, my plants are pretty happy. And I think for me, it is very easy. The only reason I really need the humidifiers is because during the winter, I'm a sucker for the cold, right? Or I have a very low tolerance for cold, so I do have my heater on, and it comes on every so often to keep my place a little warm. And that, again, when the heater turns on, it really dries up the air, so I need the humidifiers for that. But during the winter, spring, autumn, like most of the year, I can leave my windows wide open and my humidity would be about 50 to 60 without any humidifying at all. So yeah, the humidifiers really take a break during my warmer months. So again, I'm very fortunate to be in the environment I'm at, but I know that for you guys, for some of you guys who, again, you Midwest or Northeast U.S. people, I know that you guys have a tougher time with plant care. When you guys have questions regarding plant care or maintenance or whatever, who do you guys ask? What sources do you guys go to? I suspect that a lot of us will go to a close friend who have been in the hobby for a longer period of time. Maybe they have a more extensive collection, and ask them, hey, what do you think about this? I think more and more people are also going on social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram, and on there you can put up a message or a post and sort of kind of like ask the community to chime in regarding your question or concern. In medicine, we sort of do this sometimes too. And when we do this, it's referred to, or I guess termed as, either expert opinion or antidotal evidence. I think the term expert opinion is sort of self-explanatory, right? You go to somebody you consider an expert and ask them, hey, what's your opinion on this? Anecdotal evidence is sort of along the same lines, where it's sort of like, hey, this is what I did and it worked, so therefore you can take it as evidence that it might work for you too. As you can suspect, expert opinion and anecdotal evidence is considered a very low tier form of evidence, right? Because what works for some people doesn't mean doesn't work for other people, right? What works for a grower in Thailand may not work for you living in the desert, right? In medicine, imagine if you're sick and you go to your doctor and he or she's like, let's try this surgery or procedure or medication. Let's try it because I asked my doctor friend and they said it worked for one of their patients, so therefore let's just try it on you, right? That probably wouldn't sit well with some of you. As far as I know, there's really not a lot of big, robust studies comparing, head to head, or, several groups comparing, different growing techniques or, fertilizers or soil or, whatever. So I think that a lot of what we know or take as true in the plant world usually comes from anecdotal evidence and, like expert opinion. If all we have in the plant world are, the most that most of us have in the plant world is antidotal or expert opinion, there's two things that we need to do. One is that we sort of have to try to, get the best expert, right? You sort of want to ask the most expert that you can ask your question to, right? So that's one. And then two is that because it's sort of like expert opinion, you sort of have to kind of critique it or be a little critical of it, right? And you have to ask yourself, well, you know, it works for them, but will it work for me? Will it work for my plants? Will it work for my environment? Will it work for my watering habits, right? So I think that's something we have to do as well. And probably the third thing, which I think a lot of us are already doing, is that we're asking around, right? We're asking, you know, lots of expert or, you know, for a lot of opinions, and we're sort of like polling and then we're evaluating. So, no, excuse me. So I think that raises the level of you know, evidence a little bit, right? Again, I want to thank SoCal Tropics. Thank you so much, Christy and Jack, for you know, welcoming me into your home, sharing your collection with us, sharing all your plant knowledge. I think that I love your care tips. I mean, I love the way you guys are planting. I love your minimalistic approach. You know, just like do what works for cheap. Yeah, it's, you know, I have so much respect for you know, your operation, how you guys are doing things, and your selling operation. So for those of you guys who are watching, definitely follow Christy and Jack at SoCal Tropics on Instagram. They also have an eBay store, which should be selling by the time this episode comes out. I think they start selling in March, either early or late March. So definitely support them. And until next time, happy planting.